Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a book review for you, and this book will be out on the 24th, so that's when you'll see the video. And it's Counting Miracles by Nicholas Sparks. This is a Random House book, and it's his first book published with Random House. Now, I'm going to try to put something on the screen of the 24 Nicholas Sparks books that I read last June, and I read all 24 in 10 days. So my video is called 10 Days with Nicholas Sparks, and I give very small reviews of all 24 of those books. So quite naturally, when I saw on NetGalley that he had a release coming out, I went ahead and requested it, and that's the review you're seeing now. Now, in this book, you have kind of like three stories. You have the story of Caitlin and her two children, a boy and a girl. The girl is a teenager. Her name is Casey. And then you have Tanner Hughes, who's ex-military and works with vets and is pretty much a world traveler in the kind of work he does. But he's currently in Asheboro, North Carolina, but the Woods has a very unusual name, at least unusual for me. So he's in Asheboro, North Carolina. Why? Now, Tanner Hughes, when his mother gave birth to him, she passed away. He was raised by his grandparents. And when his grandmother was very ill and on her deathbed, she told him to go and find out who he was. Well, he wanted to find out who his father was. So he started doing a lot of research, and that is what led him to North Carolina, Asheboro, North Carolina. It was hard for him to find details about his past. Then you have a third story. The third story is an old man named Jasper. He's 83 years old, and he lives alone, and he had unspeakable tragedy in his life, which is why he fairly well lives almost as a recluse. However, our first character that I mentioned, Caitlin, she's a doctor. And this doctor in that small town of Asheboro, she does house calls. She has anywhere from 40 to 50 patients, and she rotates her visits with these patients. Well, 83-year-old Jasper, she might visit him a bit more. So you got Caitlin, you got Tanner, and you got Jasper. Now, this book is different than a lot of the Nicholas Sparks books I read because scripture was used throughout, especially with Jasper. Whenever Jasper faced a trial, he remembered his grandfather would use a scripture to set him on the right path. So there's a lot of scriptures mentioned in this book, and that makes it a little bit different. Now, the category is, let me tell you what the categories are. Romance, fiction, contemporary, chick lit, drama, family, women's fiction, love story, adult fiction, and modern. Okay? But what they left out is Christian fiction, because I kind of think this falls into that category. And I don't have a problem with that at all, because I love Amish romance. I love Amish books. But this book was, like I said, it was a bit different. And maybe because he has a new editor and a new publicist while he's now writing for Random House, maybe his writing has taken a bit of a turn. Now, those are just my thoughts on the type of book or the genre of the book. But what about the story? What about the characters? What about the drama that's within the story? Well, Tanner's looking for his heritage. 83-year-old Jasper, herd of a white deer in the woods, and he's trying to protect against poachers. And then you have Caitlin, and once she meets Tanner, or once they meet, there's a connection. So it's also romance, a love story. And I have been debating whether to go 4 stars or 5 stars. I'm going to go 4 stars for this book. To rate this book a little bit lower than I wanted to, because in the book community, this phrase kind of rubs people the wrong way when it's used once in a book. Jasper couldn't be certain, but in time he reached the road and let out a breath he hadn't known he'd been holding. He let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. And then you fast forward to maybe 100 pages later, and you've got Caitlin when it says it wasn't until she was in the SUV that she let out a breath she hadn't known she'd been holding. One thing that I don't like in books, it's worth 4 stars, but one thing I don't like in books is repetition of phrases. Yes, you've got a word count that you're trying to meet because this book is 368 pages, but when you use a phrase like that, when that's not the only repetition in this book, but so that's why it's going to be 4 stars. Do I recommend it? Oh, yes. Why? Because Tanner, Jasper, and Caitlin, they were all connected one way or another. And that's why you read the story, so that you could find out what are these miracles that are being counted and what happens to these protagonists in this book. And you read this book yourself, you might see why I'm raising those questions about genre or repeated phrases. And as I mentioned, those weren't the only repeated phrases. So I don't understand why those phrases were in the book. Never mind twice. And other repetition, like just a lot of repetition. So I'm wavering between 3 and 4 stars. Might be 3.5 rounded up to 4. I don't know. But when you see my book review on my blog, robinlovesreading.com, you'll see whatever conclusion I ended up making as far as the written review. So we'll see. But that's it for now. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you with my next video. Thank you.